Let's go to the Big 12 now. The last year, I'm assuming it'll be called the Big 12. They will be a 10-team league, correct? 11-team league.
I think Colorado might be staying until 2012.
Yeah, that's why I was confused. I don't know, whatever.
But soon it'll change.
Yeah. I'll say this. The team that's going to win the North is the team that's going to be joining the Big Ten a year from right now, the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Bo Pelini's heading into his third season as the head man in Lincoln, and I think he's doing a good job of getting this team back to playing the kind of football that won them championships, the kind that Bob Devaney had, the kind that Tom Osborne had, the kind of football that got away under Bill Callahan. So the team is playing much better. They don't play Oklahoma. They don't play Texas Tech. They get Texas in Lincoln, so the Big 12 schedule is favorable for them. They got a pretty weak non-conference schedule except for a tricky game at Washington. But other than that, I think Nebraska could pretty much cruise through the Big 12 schedule. In the South, it comes down to pretty much Oklahoma or Texas every year. This year, I'm going to go Oklahoma. Last year, this was an 8-5 football team. 4 of their losses were by a combined 12 points. They lost a lot of their talented playmakers like quarterback Sam Bradford, tight end Jermaine Gresham. They didn't have them, but they still found a way to win 8 football games. This was a team that was playing better at the end of the year. You take a look at quarterback Landry Jones. He's a freshman last year, thrown into the fire. He had moments of brilliance when he had 26 touchdowns, but he did have a lot of interceptions. But in that bowl game, left me with a pretty good impression when he threw for over 400 yards versus a ranked Stanford team. So I finally think Bob Stoops gets this team back to the Big 12 championship game. The offense is going to be better than last year. I think it's going to resemble the 08 offense where they put up 51 points per game. I like Oklahoma out of the South. And when Bob Stoops gets to Big 12 championship games, he usually doesn't lose. So I got to pick Oklahoma to win the Big 12 championship game. Mike, who do you got?
We don't have a lot of disagreement. One interesting thread I'm looking at is Bo Pelini came out and said he is not named a starter at quarterback at Nebraska. Zach Lee started last year. He's returning this season. A little bit of a question mark there, but I think he ultimately ends up being the starter. And Nebraska runs the table, goes undefeated in Big 12 conference play, gets to that Big 12 championship game because of their defense, but loses to Oklahoma. And I'll tell you why Oklahoma wins the South. It's like you said, Landry Jones has more experience than Garrett Gilbert. And I think that makes a huge difference in the long run. Texas returns a plethora of wide receivers in James Kirkendall and Malcolm Williams and a quality back in Trey Newton. But on the other side, Oklahoma, Ryan Broyles, Kenny Stills, the freshman phenom at wide receiver, and then DeMarco Murray at running back. A lot of experience there, too, and a consistent offensive line that's gained experience from last season. So Oklahoma beats an undefeated Nebraska team in the Big 12 championship game, and we have Oklahoma winning the Big 12.
Well, I guess we don't have a whole lot of disagreement because I'm going to take Nebraska to win the North as well. The North is just a weak division. If anyone's going to give Nebraska a push, it's going to be Missouri. They were 8-5 last year. They lost a couple close games. They have a great quarterback in Blaine Gabbert. But in the end, Nebraska with their defense, they're going to win the North. And I do have Oklahoma coming out of the South. As you said, Landry Jones has more experience than Garrett Gilbert. Garrett Gilbert got some experience in the championship game, and he had some good moments. He had some bad. I think we see more of the good moments and more of the bad moments again this year, much as we saw with Landry Jones last year. Oklahoma comes out of the South, beats Nebraska in the championship game. They go to the BCS Continental.
I want to throw out my sleeper pick out there, and it comes from College Station, Texas, and the Texas A&M Aggies. Nobody was expecting anything out of this ball club last year. Mike Sherman found a way to get this team to a bowl game with a 6-6 record. But I think they got one of the better young quarterbacks in the country in Gerard Johnson. He's a threat on foot and in the air. So I like this quarterback. They have 16 returning starters from last year, and they also played a school record 18 true freshmen. So there's a lot of young players on this team that have a lot of experience. And they play Nebraska and Oklahoma in College Station, and they also play Texas. I'm saying right now, they're going to win at least one of those games. They're too good of a team to lose all 3 of those football games. My sleeper in this conference is Texas A&M.
Were you reading my notes? Because Texas A&M is my sleeper, too.
Yeah.
I love what Mike Sherman is doing down there. Gerard Johnson is a great quarterback. He threw for 30 touchdowns last year, ran for 8 more. And don't forget, their game against Texas last year was a great game. And that's part of the reason Nebraska is getting hyped up so much, too, is because of the game they gave Texas in the championship for the Big 12. Texas A&M has a lot of talent, a lot of experience on their team now. They could make a run.
Baylor, I'd love to see Art Briles and Baylor win some games and get to a bowl game. Robert Griffin III returns after an injury last season that really decimated them. A lot of people had high hopes for Baylor to make a bowl game. I think this year Baylor surprises some people, maybe has some tougher games with teams like Texas, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and they may get to, I think they get to a bowl game at the end with 6 wins.
And I liked earlier, too, how you mentioned Missouri might be threatening the North, because I think we all have Nebraska. I think Nebraska's a pretty safe bet as the favorite, but Missouri was supposed to be in rebuilding mode last year. Not a lot of people were expecting. I mean, as you mentioned, they won 8 football games. And, you know, if they somehow find a way to beat Nebraska in Lincoln, which if you remember last year, they were completely controlling that game into the fourth quarter, maybe they could win the North, because the North is pretty weak. Iowa State's going to win less games than last year because of that brutal schedule. Colorado's been in shambles ever since Dan Hawkins took over. Kansas is in transition with a new head football coach. And then, you know, Kansas State's been down too. So, you know, Missouri has a chance, but I think we're all pretty vanilla with our picks on that.
Their starting tailback, Derek Washington, will miss game 1 against Illinois due to violating team rules. So we'll see if that suspension continues or it's just 1 game, and that'll make a huge difference for their run in the Big 12 North.
The SEC has won the last 4 national championships. Will it be 5? Who knows? I hope not, because I'm getting tired of the SEC winning national championships. In the West, Alabama, I think you got to go with Alabama. The last 2 years, they have finished the regular season 12-0. Which pretty impressive, especially in that football conference, because even when Florida won their national championships, they still found ways to lose SEC games. So what Nick Saban has done there has been very impressive. They also got the defending Heisman Trophy winner back, so that doesn't hurt either. In the East, I'm going to go a little different than what a lot of the college football predictors are going. I'm going to say Georgia. Georgia was 8-5 last year. You know, a lot of people aren't really expecting him to do much this year, but don't ever underestimate Mark Richt. He's the most tenured coach in the SEC. He has more road wins than anybody else in the SEC. And you take a look at what he has coming back on offense. 10 starters coming back, a great wide receiver in A.J. Green. Hopefully with Sean Ely, if he gets all this off-the-field stuff taken care of, hopefully he'll be back at running back. And they also have a great offensive line, possibly the best in the SEC coming back. Special teams are always big in the SEC. They have the Ray Guy Award winner coming back, and they also got a Groza finalist coming back as a kicker. So this is a team, if they find a way to beat Florida, this is a team that could be represented in the East. They also might not even have to beat Florida, because you take a look at Florida, they got to play Alabama in Tuscaloosa, and then they got to play LSU. Georgia doesn't play any of those football teams. So I think Georgia, under the radar, a great shot to get that title game. But I think Alabama, though, beats Georgia in Atlanta for the SEC title game. Jake.
Well, out of the West, I'm going to take Alabama as well. They are consensus #1 in the country for a reason. They won the championship last year, rolled through it, almost everyone on their schedule. If anyone's going to challenge them, I would think it would be Arkansas with Ryan Mallett. He had a great year last year. But I just see Alabama coming out of the West. Out of the East, I'm going to go with Florida. I do like Georgia, as you said. Mark Richt is an under-the-radar coach right now because Georgia has been down in recent years. As you said, they do return 10 starters on offense, but the most important position is the quarterback position. And they have a freshman starting this year. He is a highly rated recruit from Tampa, Florida. But I like Florida to come out of the East. I am officially on the John Brantley bandwagon. He put up incredible stats last year, throwing 7 touchdowns versus 0 interceptions. Once one Timothy Tebow was injured last year with that brutal concussion. Like a rematch with Florida and Alabama in the SEC championship game again. This time, I think Florida wins, and I think we will see them in the BCS National Championship game.
Ooh, wow. I want to say this, though, too, about Mark Richt, and we both were giving our love to one of the great coaches in college football. Some of these Georgia fans are saying he's on the hot seat, you know, after last year. Shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. This guy's a great football coach. If 8 wins is your worst season throughout your tenure at Georgia, then that's pretty darn good. And also his winning percentage is better than Vince Dooley, by the way. I just thought I'd throw that out there. Mike?